Avi Meyers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. It's post-election time. Yay! We are so happy. I want to remind you real quick, July 9th is the big event for the Shomrim Society. Our last guest, Mark Buslick, talked about it, so if you missed it on air, go to our YouTube page, everythingntnm.org. We're real big on community policing, cast24.org, and as an intro, and we'll go from there, probably the best police blotter, not probably, the best police blotter I've ever read in my life, but I was even touting it to Captain Buslick, and I've touted it to other members of the Chicago Police Department in command positions, is written by my next guest, who I will let him tell you all the different, when you're, take it from me, when you're writing, and especially when you're starting or the first few years, you have no idea how many different places I wrote and how many times I moved around and how many people I might have worked for at once. And Mark Schipper, who is a native of Minnesota, a grad of UCLA, is, how you doing, Mark?
Good, Avi. How are you doing? It's good to be back here.
So, yeah, it's great to have you here. Tell us about all the different hats you're wearing right now as a journalist.
Yeah, a couple different hats. I'm just a basic reporter, but I work for DNA Info. I work for Inside Publications, which cover basically the entire north side of the city. And I cast a wide net, as they say. I love almost any kind of interesting story, and I love to write. So
You still doing Bleacher Report?
No, I'm out. I'm out with Bleacher Report.
Oh, okay.
I took on another role at a SB Nation site. It's a massive blog network, one of the biggest in the country, called Pacific Takes. And we write about the Pac-12, West Coast college sports. So I cover UCLA and I cover Oregon football for them.
So Kevin Looney's the guy this year?
Kevin Looney, come on, don't bring up Kevin Looney. I want him to stay another year. Yeah, he's going to the draft, though. He might be a lottery pick.
He'll be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, you can't fault those guys for turning that down. I wanted him to stay another year in a huge way. And his skill set could use another year at the college level. There's no question about it. But when you have agents and you have NBA front office guys saying, we're going to take you in the first 14 picks of the draft, and you're guaranteed multi-millions, and you're 20 years old,
Well,
I don't think you can turn that
Ford,
down.
He has him at number 10 in his latest mock draft.
Number 10. So he's going to be, and he's a smart guy. He comes from a good family from Milwaukee. And if he signs that multi-million-dollar contract, they're going to be smart with that money. He's going to be set for life. So it's really hard to tell a guy to stay and play college basketball and potentially hurt yourself and ruin your career when you're going to make that kind of money. So he's out. But UCLA recruits well, and they got some good players coming
They do.
in.
I mean, you look at guys like Shabazz Muhammad and Zach Levin, who's showing he's got tremendous athletic ability.
Another guy who left after his freshman year.
Yeah. Although he should have really stayed. He's really unpolished, as unpolished can be, but he's got all the talent in the world.
Yeah.
So let's move on to let's talk about, first of all, let's talk the police blotter.
Let's talk.
You're doing the police blotter in 24, which is our home district here, West Rogers Park, and
Right.
20, which is directly south of us, as a matter of fact.
Yep, 5400 Lincoln.
And you know what? When I read your police blotters, it's like it just comes out. It's sort of like I can visualize what's going on. I really get this clear view when you've got such an interesting way of narrating what's going on. It's hard not to have a good picture of it as it goes. So, I mean, how is it, do you have any thought in mind, or are you being yourself? I mean, what is there's what's behind, the way you do things?
Yeah, I wish it was as colorful as it used to be. I started realizing...
Not enough crime? We can change that.
Well, no, the crime's actually pretty steady. That's 20's quiet. I had a review officer at 24. He was a funny guy, and he always used to call 20 Mayberry because nothing went on over there. So we'd get a few stories every week, but 20's actually turned out some really interesting stories. But I wish it was as colorful as it used to be. I used to write it like I was writing a short story or something, because I had the freedom with an editor to do that. It was sort of an absentee editor, and he wouldn't really look all that closely at what I wrote. So I wrote a much more florid blotter. It was interesting to read. It's gotten a little more professional in the last few years, but I write stuff that I think would be more interesting to read than the regular newspaper copy.
I agree.
Because you can look at a lot of newspaper stories, and the byline could be interchangeable. They all sound exactly the same because editorial gets their claws into it, and they chop stuff and change stuff, and they write how they want to write. And you get it out, and it's like, I didn't write that. I provided the facts. They wrote it. And so, unfortunately, that's what happened. But I still have an editor for the police blotter who allows me quite a bit of leeway to write what I want. So I try and write an interesting story, something people are going to want to look at.
And you do actually succeed. Because a lot of police blotters over the years have put me completely to sleep. And,
right.
I definitely get into the stuff you're writing.
I utilize all quotes. If anybody says anything that's down in the police report, I try and make a dialogue exchange. I try and let people see what was said back and forth to each other. So there's quotes that you won't get in any other police blotter for sure. And then, I try to describe settings, scenery, time of night, time of day, whatever it might be. So
it's almost like a good B movie sometimes.
Right.
The film. I love film noir, and I'm kind of glad that one of the channels on Sunday brought back. There was some seriously good bogey stuff on this Sunday.
Oh God, I was just watching. What I watch? The Big Sleep.
Great
and Key Largo, 2 bogey movies.
Yeah, I've seen I've not only seen just about everything Bogey's put out, but in the old days they used to have the old days they used to have movie theaters that would show old time movies. Some in the neighborhood. There was a place downtown, the Clark Theater, only had old movies. And
I love that.
There were also places like the Biograph, and I would, I actually. The first time I saw Casablanca was actually at the Biograph.
Oh, was it really? Yeah, you got that in the theater. That's awesome.
That was really cool to watch that stuff in the theater.
Yep.
So, DNA Info is fairly new. What are you covering in DNA Info right now?
Well, DNA Info, my official beat is Uptown. I'm like a preferred freelance correspondent. So I'm not the neighborhood reporter for Uptown, but they look at anything I pitch to them with priority preference.
Cool.
Yeah, so it is. And the great thing I actually kind of like that I'm not the reporter for Uptown because I can move around the city. I've pitched police stories from Rogers Park. I've pitched stories downtown. I've pitched stories in multiple neighborhoods. And DNA looks at it first, and if it's a good story, they'll take it. So I've been able to get a few off in different parts of town. And DNA's just a great new news organization. DNA is the Tribune and the Sun-Times in a new format, meaning they don't put out a physical paper every day. They put it out online. They put it out on video. They tweet it out. So it's basically the cutting edge distribution network of using the technology we have today, but they operate with the exact same standards and principles as any kind of old media organization. So DNA it's a great place to work for.
Yeah, it's been. You know what? For the most part, I really like the reporters. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but he sure has a lot of people pissed off at the 24th district. Our local guy, and that's an understatement. As a matter of fact, when we got this letter from DNA, with somebody saying, "Hey, I'm the new guy in the neighborhood," which really isn't technically correct from what I can see in the paper. The commander was cheering.
Oh yeah.
It was like good news for people. I mean,
right.
But you know what? Let's talk. You were mentioning some stories you've written.
Yeah.
One of the things this is, I've always been fascinated with. Montrose Harbor early in the year. There's smelt fishing. There's other things going on. Yeah. So you're talking about tell us the story. Yeah,
it's actually smelt fishing goes on, but the big thing in Montrose Harbor early in the season is coho salmon fishing. So you get a lot of what they call power liners out there, and these power liners they set up with usually it's a 15-pound fire extinguisher, which is a big, almost industrial size fire extinguisher. It's a powerful fire extinguisher. It's shot out of all its fire retardant material. It only has the CO2 left in there. So they take a weight, they modify these things, and they fire this weight out, and it goes out 200-300 yards out into Lake Michigan. And attached to that weight is a rubber band. They reel back in that rubber band. It's got a swivel on it. They clasp it to a big power line, and they feed out this power line. On that power line, about every 5 feet, are hooks. They hook either minnows or night crawlers onto that, and they let this thing go out. So they got about anywhere from 25 to 50 hooks going out several hundred yards into Lake Michigan, and they just sit. And there's a little bell attached to their rig that's hooked up to the line, and if a fish hits that line, that bell will start to ring, and they pull in the line. And many times they have coho, they catch brown trout, they catch steelhead, which are giant rainbow trout. All delicious to eat. It's a fun time. They get out there before dawn. And so we got some good pictures, we got some good video, and we just covered these power liners. I met a Cuban guy, actually, who was one of the most interesting people I'd ever met. He's like a fishing mystic sort of type. He's 71 years old. He rode to an aircraft carrier in Guantanamo Bay with some family back in 1968, shortly after Castro took power. He ruined the fishing livelihood for them. Instead of selling to fish markets, they had to sell to fish factories. He couldn't make a living, and so he rode his family out. The United States aircraft carrier picked him up, took him to Guantanamo Bay. A week later, he's in Chicago. He's been here ever since. And people know who he is because he has this really interesting rig set up, and he's a great fisherman. And when I was there, he was bringing in coho salmon, and he was just talking old lore. So it was a pretty interesting
just
story.
switched what I'm going to make for dinner tonight.
You should.
I'm in a fish mood right now for some reason.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a great story. I mean,
It was really cool.
and it's this is something that's right in the neighborhood. I mean, Montrose Harbor is real close to here.
Real close.
So what are some of the other favorite stories you've written for him?
For DNA, hey man, what have I had? I told you about the Rogers Park police story we had not too long ago.
We're talking two suicide attempts.
The two suicide attempts. It's not a pleasant story, but it's an interesting story. When you live in a big city, weird things happen.
Yeah.
This is one of those nights. This was April 14th. Weird things happened. There were two bizarre suicide attempts. The first one took place south of the Loyola CTA tracks. This is what ties the two stories together. Both people used the CTA tracks in a way to try and apparently kill themselves. In my opinion, only the male was serious. The female had a fight with her mother, and it was an interesting thing. But she went down on the tracks and tried to grab onto the third rail, which is the electrified rail.
Right.
A CTA employee stopped her. They got in a sort of a fight. The CTA employee said, "Are you really trying to do this?" And she said, "Yeah, this is it." And so she let her go, like, "All right, then do it, because I'm not going to get electrocuted with you." And she didn't do it. She ran down the track. She tried to scale down the wall. The police showed up. They had to pull her up, and they saved her. And when they went back, she was real combative with them, and it was just a sort of ugly, stupid scene. But she claimed she was bipolar, so maybe she had a chemical imbalance, and she was not in control of her faculties. The one that actually happened a little bit later.
Got to be quick here because we're running out of time.
How much time I have left?
About 30 seconds.
Okay. This is about 2:30 a.m. This guy goes up to the Pritzker garage. That's 7474 Rogers. Top floor. This guy actually he rents a zip car. He wants to drive through the wall and plummet down onto the CTA tracks about 40, 50 feet. He's pacing off his steps. He drives. He only gets up to about 30, 35 miles an hour. It's a brick wall, reinforced concrete. He slams into it. He's not wearing a seatbelt, of course. He's not trying to survive. The car flips, breaks his neck. I've heard two reports. He's either quadriplegic or just broken neck, and he's gonna survive either way, but not paralyzed. So the police saved both these people. April 14th.
Wow. Anyway, I want to thank you very much, Mark Schipper. Thank you, Sonny Hirsch. Join us again next week. Hope to get you back on again soon, Mark.
Yes,
Thanks.
sir. Glad to be here.
Bye-bye, everybody.